last night's discussions, I've been asked to make a special announcement, and it is this: that in view of the fact that there is the internet listener also participating in our gatherings, it has been regarded unfair that the question and answers on the 12th Eve, which would be on the 31st of January, should be confined to those who are physically present. And therefore, it is thought, and it's been agreed, that questions be put on the internet to the organizers, and the organizers would then have those questions answered on 31st January, so that those not physically present can also participate. The email address of the organizers is jpcbandra@yahoo.com. That is jpcbandra@yahoo.com. So those questions that will be received on the internet by email will take priority and precedence and will be dealt with at that meeting in fairness to all participating persons. We were discussing yesterday the celestial organization by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I am keen hurriedly to complete that subject so that we come down to the earth this evening, as is our agenda. There are just 4 quick points that I want to make in respect of the celestial organization before we leave the subject altogether for this particular Ashura. And the first point I want to make is we have seen how Allah is the Lord of the East and the West, raising the sun from the East, setting it from the West, the orbits that He has organized from West and East and West. And as He says in the Holy Book Himself, بِرَبِّ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ, He is the Lord of the East and the West. That is chapter 70, verse 40. But the more intriguing verse comes in Surah Rahman in verse 17. That's chapter 55, verse 17, in which it says, رَبُّ الْمَشْرِقَيْنِ وَرَبُّ الْمَغْرِبَيْنِ. He says He's the Lord of the 2 Easts and the Lord of the 2 Wests. Now where have the 2 Easts come from? Where have the 2 Wests come from? We know of 1 East and one West. But we know today that there in fact are 2 Easts, because the sun does not rise from the same place. It generally rises from the east, but it is not the same actual point from where the sun is seen rising, because of the rotation of the earth on its axis. And according to the season, you find that the sun is rising in the east at one place, and the next day at the point next to it. And astronomers have actually delineated the points from which the sun rises at one time and how far it goes to the east in rising at other times. And those 2 points have been regarded as the 2 Easts. Similarly, it is not set at exactly the same point every day. Depending upon the season, it sets at one point and then it moves also. And the points change, depending upon how long the day is. The shorter the day, the shorter the distance, the greater the distance between the 2 points, demarcating the second East and the second West, respectively. Today, we know this concept. And we can understand why it happens, because of the rotation of the earth on its tilted axis, and it is comprehensible and it has been scientifically proved. But in the days of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, 14 centuries later, this notion did not exist at all. And despite the fact that nobody knew about it, Allah, in His mercy, and I say this is total mercy, indeed it appears in the chapter of mercy. The ayah appears in the chapter of Rahman, the mercy of Allah. And in that chapter, it would not be in keeping with mercy if one point from where the sun rises is recognized as a point of Allah, and the second is not. And so in that fairness, Allah says that He is Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain. Another challenge to the scientists as to how that can come about in text of this nature, except for the fact that the book was sent by the very creator of the sun and the earth to call himself Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain. And the second point, which I said I would deal with, but I haven't, and I do wish to do so before I conclude, the question of the celestial organization. And it is this, we looked at that verse of the holy chapter of Yasin, and it is verse 38, in which Allah Ta'ala says, and I'm sure you have the verse by heart by now, it says, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. And the sun is moving to its settled destination. And we talked about this at length as to how it is the sun that is moving. And we now today know that it is the sun moving when it was not known. The Holy Quran mentioned about it. But this, لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا, a definite destination. What is that destination? Alhamdulillah, we have come to know that too. We claim we know. And we do it this way. The astrophysicists have charted the path of the sun in the entire galaxy. And as they've charted the path of the sun, they have computerized the path that the sun will take as it is traversing. Taking into account the present movement of the sun, they have charted out, planned out how, in what direction the sun will move. And they have seen that it is moving towards the constellation of Hercules. And by the time the sun dims itself and dies, it will be settled in the constellation of Hercules. A known place in our galaxy, known place to the astronomers. The Holy Book does not even end there. It does not only say لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا, it also defines exactly how the sun will die, in what circumstances it will die, and what is the procedure by which it will die. Well, the scientist thinks that it's presently inexhaustible storage of hydrogen and helium will indeed will fizzle off, and that will ultimately cause its death. Quran has a more detailed explanation of exactly how it will happen. Inshallah, if we have opportunity to discuss that aspect in detail, we shall do so. Not the subject of our discussion this time, but that mustaqarrin laha, it was pointed out that I have not said exactly where it is. That is the place pointed out. And the third thing that I wanted to say in respect of the universe is that recently, and by when I say recently, I mean just about 50 years ago, Einstein, who was, and made his name through this theory, who set out the theory of relativity. And in that theory of relativity, Einstein made the point that the universe, huge as it is still expanding. More stars are born, nay, more galaxies are born. And this is Allah's Azizul Alim, Allah's might and Allah's knowledge. And we have already seen the verse which says that the universe is still growing. But in view of the fact that the scientific theory is that the universe is expanding, I thought I'd point out also that the Holy Book, not in this century, but 14 centuries ago, exactly 14 centuries ago, the Holy Book has said that the universe is expanding. And to give you the chapter and verse, it is chapter 51 of Dhariyat, verse 47. And Allah Ta'ala in that chapter and in that verse says, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدِينَ, that we created the heaven, we built it with might. وَإِنَّا لَمُسِيعُونَ, and it is a universe which we are expanding. It is in continuous tense. It is indeed in continuous tense, لِمُسِيعِينَ, and hence it shows that it continues to expand. And that process is yet incomplete, awaiting the pleasure of Allah. So you can see that doctrine which science has come to discover in this century was set out in the Holy Book years ago. And who would have thought of the expanding universe then? Leaves us with no option, no choice except to say that there is no human contribution in the preparation of the Holy Book. It must be the divine word. And finally, I want to mention, if only for barakah, the great prophecy about scientific advancements that the world will make in the Holy Book. The Holy Book predicted 14 centuries ago of the progress man will make in respect of its exploration of the space. We first landed on the space in what? 1961. But exactly 14 centuries ago, Allah Ta'ala in Surah Rahman, in verse 33 says, Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-ins, in istata'tum an tanfudhu min aqtari as-samawati wal-ard, fanfudhu, la tanfudhuna illa bisultan. That was said 14 centuries ago. Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-ins. The first point to notice is, it is not addressed only to men, it is addressed to the jinn also. That you group of jinn and you group of men, in istata'tum an tanfudhu min aqtari as-samawati wal-ard, if you have the capacity to penetrate, that's the word, tanfudhu, to penetrate, because as you know, to penetrate is to enter from one side and come out from the other. That is penetration. So Allah Ta'ala says, if you can penetrate through the bounds of the heavens and the sky, do so. تَنْفُذُوا مِنْ أَقْطَارِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فَانْفُذُوا لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. But watch out, you will not be able to cross the boundaries of space. You will not be able to cross the boundaries of the earth except with the help of some mighty power. Some have translated it with the help of Allah, but obviously nothing happens without the will of Allah. If He does not will, no human effort, no help from any other sultan will enable men to achieve this. But it must mean more than that. It must mean more than divine help. The human resources must be such. It may well be that Allah Ta'ala says, this is an exercise that will only be undertaken by superpowers, by powers who have sufficient might to be able to carry out the research that is necessary, to build the spacecrafts that will be necessary. All that could not have been explained to the Arabs of the time. That was left for us to understand. As I say, Quran is split in that way, so that a person reading it at his age understands it within his capacity. The Arab of the time understands it. It was no use sending a Quran that only we would understand 14 centuries later. It had to be a Quran that the person listening to it when the ayah is revealed also understands. And this became a forecast, as it were. Quran, alhamdulillah, has a number of forecasts, a number of predictions made in it, and all of them have come true. All of them that had to come true have already come true. And those that are yet to come true, we therefore are convinced will come true. And this ayah is one of them. Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-ins. But what we do not know at all is this, that apart from the effort of the ins, that is the men of human, the jinn are also making their efforts. They are also making their efforts to cross the boundaries of the earth and the heaven. And they perhaps might succeed before us, but we making our efforts, alhamdulillah, with Allah's grace. So he says, do that, and you can see that science is no threat to Islam in any way at all. People tend to think that, oh, this is indeed, when man landed on the moon, there were those religious people who said, no, this is all lies. Nobody has landed on the moon. You can't land on the moon. And one did not see reason to be afraid. Allah Himself has predicted in Quran that is possible and it can be done. Make sure that you have enough help. You have enough help of a power, of an authority before you undertake these journeys. But if you do, then you have Allah's blessings. The word if in English, and this is where English is so shallow compared to Arabic, and hence the translations become so difficult. The word if is if. When something is uncertain to happen, it is if. And if something can surely happen, if certain other conditions prevail, that is also if. And if something can never happen, there again you use if. In Arabic you don't. When there is a possibility of something happening, the word used is idha. When there are two possibilities. It can happen, it may not happen, depending upon how much effort you put into it. But it can happen if effort is put into it and the correct conditions prevail, then that situation can occur. In that case, that if is represented by in, the word in. And if it cannot happen at all, it is just impossible. That if is of an act which is impossible, then the word used is law. You can see here, the word used is in. Ya ma'shar al-jinni wal-ins, in istata'tum an tanfudhu min aqdari samawati wal-ard. It is in. So that Allah is saying, it is not impossible. Those always who were saying, oh, you cannot land on the moon, horribly wrong. They went wrong totally in interpretation of Quran. This word in there shows that the possibility is real and it could well take place. That man will land, will cross the boundaries of the heavens and the earth. And we have a long way to go. Indeed, now, very recently, another spacecraft has gone to Jupiter to make progress there. And indeed, the search really is for another earth. We have already seen in the last 2 nights, or was it last night that we saw that ayah of Quran which talks of the existence of an earth like our earth. مثل هذا الأرض. So there is a live possibility that there is another earth. The moon, of course, is no good for us because there is no water on the moon. Allah has designated different areas for different people. There may be life on the moon, but not for us. We require water, and that is what, and we will come to this. I do not wish to take your time tonight. Tomorrow night, inshallah. Tonight, I hope we will finish the water cycle, but tomorrow night we will discuss the seas and the waters, the rivers, and what Allah in His book says about the creation of all these water canals. But for the moment, yes, there are areas designated for different places. The point I want to make there is the very fact that not everybody can live everywhere. Only specific people can live in specific places also shows that there is that celestial organization by Allah, which means that the control is in the hands of Allah. There is a controlling authority. That creating authority has the controlling authority, and things don't happen by chance. They don't just happen because it is good luck. Who made the luck then, if there is no God? Well, so the possibility, Quran says, is real. So it shows that all these have boundaries. Just the 7 heavens, inshallah, we shall see the boundaries of each of these heavens. And there are restrictions on entries. We saw that ayah of Surah Mulk, in which the stars in the lower heaven are called وَالرُّجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ. They are like arrows which are flung from these stars. You see, stars have they are guards. They are like supervisors, like indeed boundary guards. They are on the boundaries between the sun, between the various samawat. They are at the bottom of the first earth, which is the sky, as we know it. And there are those stars which shoot out arrows on those devils who want to trespass into the first samawat, into the first heaven. Scientists on interpreting that ayah think these are shooting stars that they are talking about. But as I said, we will leave that discussion as to whether they are shooting stars or not to another day. What is important to notice is that there are these boundaries. But the other point that I wanted to make, because we are not discussing that in this particular sitting, we may discuss if opportunity arises, is that when there are 7 samawat, there are ardina sab'a, there are 7 earths as well. Whether you interpret that letter, that figure 7 literally, or whether you interpret it metaphorically in its plural sense only, there are a number of earths. Allah Ta'ala is saying that there is not only the possibility of man traversing through the boundaries of heavens, but also the boundaries of the earth. And indeed, we may well have done a little of that in the research we have done in aquatic life, in the research we have done about the living things that live in the waters. Well, I propose to pause here on celestial organization in the trust and faith that I have sufficiently established that the heavens are not created by themselves. There was specific creation, and that creation therefore could only be by Allah. That there is organization in those celestial bodies, and that that organization is controlled and can be diminished, and even the universe in the celestial organization is in a state of expansion, which shows that there still is that creator who is creating. And that is not difficult to understand as my final point before I wind up on that series, because insofar as humans are concerned, we see that growth is continuing. More and more people are born as people die. We saw that for stars. More and more stars are born as stars die. And indeed, he calls himself Yuhyi wa Yumeet, wa Yumeet wa Yuhyi, wa huwa hayyun la yamut, biyadihi al-khair, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. This is how he describes himself. That description of Yuhyi wa Yumeet is all in a continuous Arabic sense, in Arabic grammar. Hence, it is a process that continues. And if it is a process that continues with humans, if it is a process, as we will see, continues with the earth as well, when we will consider the earth tonight and tomorrow night, inshallah. Tonight, I hope we will cover the general creation of the earth. Tomorrow night, we have kept with the specifics as the agenda sets out, discussing the reliefs, the mountains on the earth, discussing the rivers on the earth, discussing the atmosphere around the earth. And so why confine ourselves to any particular subject? Whatever we can cover tomorrow night in respect of the specific items that Allah Ta'ala has created on the earth. Well, so all those items are expanding. The rivers, the oceans, land, all is expanding. Human is expanding. Why should not the universe be expanding if that Yuhyi wa Yumeet is in continuous sense? But it would not so happen if there wasn't a creator. As I said, our main purpose of discussing this subject is to know the creator so that we can worship him better. But as he says of the heavens, he says of the earth. And he says he created the earth. And he created the earth again with that organization, with that earthly setup as it is. And the first ayah, and as we did with the heavens, so in the earth, I wish to refer you to these ayahs of Quran, because what we are essentially discussing is the Holy Quran, the teachings of Quran, the beneficence of Quran, and in the process we see the scientific teachings, and see that those scientific teachings were taught centuries ago. In Surah Baqarah, verse 22, Allah Ta'ala says, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. Allah is the one who made the earth a resting place for you. Some have interpreted that a firash really is a bed. A fash is really a bed. Firash is the plural. Is a bed. And Allah says He has made it a resting place for you, a couch for you if you like. وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً. And on top of that He has made the heavens the edifice for you. وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and He has sent down water from the heavens. Fantastic point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes. It is fantastic because until then, when the Quran was revealed, it was not even very clear whether all the water that is on the earth comes from the rain or not. Different propositions appeared. Aristotle had his own propositions, Plato had his own propositions, and inshallah we shall discuss when we come to exactly see the water in the earth, how these philosophers looked at things differently. But it is one thing, as I have been saying, for a philosopher to sit down and visualize a hypothesis or to visualize a theory. It is quite another for the very creator to tell you how exactly everything functions, how exactly that which He created Himself with His heart, with His own hands. Biyadayya, as He says it, with my two hands. If He has, according to us, as He surely has created it Himself with His two hands, then He is the best to say it. And you can see in Surah Baqarah, He says clearly, وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. And why? Why has He sent water down from the heaven? We get water from the well, and we drink the water from the well. Why then the water from Sama? And that ayah answers it, فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. So that He sent down the water, so that He brings forth from that water. مِنَ السَّمَاءِ فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ. That is what Quran says. That it is through that water that He sprouts out. فَأَخْرَجَ, He sprouts out from the earth. مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. He sprouts out fruits for you, which becomes your sustenance. Allah obviously does not send men on earth. And this out is where we differ from the scriptures. The scriptures talk of men coming before vegetation, and we have been saying no, vegetation came first. The scientist has resolved that vegetation came first and man came later, exactly in keeping with the spirit of the Holy Quran. And that is why I say, and allow me to say this once more, even by way of repetition, at least once tonight, that there is nothing, not one statement in the Holy Quran which contradicts the findings of the scientists today. The research of the scientists does not contradict a single ayah of the Holy Quran. So there we are. Allah says, وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. And then makes a fantastic admonition, says, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Then do not give Allah partners. Do not take gods apart from Allah when you know better already. When you already have knowledge that Allah has no partner, do not give him partners. Do not create other gods besides God. Do not join equals with God when you already know better. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Well, we can take that sentence literally. And it's no use just discussing scientific principles without discussing these admonitions, so I will not keep you more than a minute on it. We can take it literally to mean that we should not believe that there is more than one God, or that Allah has any competitor, and we do not, alhamdulillah, believe that. But when He says we should not take other gods, does it not also mean that we should not get these other gods of our own conceptions? Because when Salman, and we discussed this only last year, and so I will not detain you on it, merely a quick reminder of that hadith, Hijjatul Wida. Salman asks the Holy Prophet, you say that Muslims will be idol worshippers? He says, Ya Rasulullah, we destroyed all the idols when we conquered Makkah. And the Holy Prophet says, yes, when I say they will worship idols, I do not mean these idols which we destroyed. I mean principally the dirham. And dirham is what the Holy Prophet mentioned, that they will worship. I could change that into the dollar, could I not? And say they will be worshipping the dollar, which is perhaps worse. thing to worship. To become subservient to our materialistic needs, taking it broadly. To become subservient to our materialistic needs. And as I said a couple of nights back, to have no time in the rat race to look at the sky and admire the glory of Allah. Well, that is the admonition Allah gives. But to come back to what we were discussing, in that ayah you can see Quran is setting out why water comes from the sky. It needs that because it is that water from above, when it falls on the plants and it falls on the soil, and the soil absorbs that water that enables fruits to grow, Allah Ta'ala says, and science has shown that exactly to be the case today, contrary to what the philosophers of the time thought. And take you to Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 3, chapter 13. It says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَدَّ الْأَرْضِ. He spread out the earth. And we know this from our sittings on Lahu al-Ard. وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَدَّ الْأَرْضِ, because it was water, primarily water. And Allah created water primarily on earth because it is through water that life comes into existence. But we will come to that specific ayah in the Holy Book which says that in so many words. So he says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَدَّ الْأَرْضِ وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ وَأَنْهَارًا. And then two things, but we will discuss those in detail tomorrow, so I will merely translate these words here. And he created, he set وَجَعَلَ, and he set into the earth rawasiya, mountains, and وَأَنْهَارًا, and rivers, mountains and rivers. And we shall inshallah discuss both of those in some detail. وَمِن كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ جَعَلَ فِيهَا زَوْجَيْنِ. And he says, for every fruit, he has created them in pairs. He has created a zawj, a spouse. So they are in pairs. وَمِن كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ جَعَلَ فِيهَا زَوْجَيْنِ اثنين, two of them. يُغْشِي اللَّيْلَ النَّهَارِ. He covers the day with the night. And we've already discussed that. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And in this and in these signs, there are signs for those who reflect, those who think. And that is the invitation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us, to think, to apply our minds to these matters, not merely apply our bodies to it. But coming back to the ayah itself, it talks of the creation of the earth, and it talks of the mountains and the rivers being equally important as a source of water. And he says that all the fruit, وَمِن كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ جَعَلَ فِيهَا زَوْجَيْنِ. All the fruits that I've created them in pairs. We will discuss that in detail a couple of nights later when we discuss plant life. But to merely open up this question of the creation of the earth and creation of the mountains and the rivers and the fruits and how plants are created, to say right from the outset tonight that Allah talks of these fruits being in pairs at a time when nobody on earth knew that each fruit comes in pairs. That was a theory unknown 14 centuries ago. It has only come to be known a couple of centuries ago when man has discovered that fruits have pairs. And Quran repeatedly has made that particular proposition. Again showing that it is not a book the Holy Prophet could have invented by himself, because it was knowledge beyond what the world knew at that time, save for the knowledge that the Holy Prophet got directly from Allah. And I would like also to cite you Surah Al-Hijr, verses 19 to 21, because it encompasses many matters on the creation of the earth. It says, وَالْأَرْضَ مَدَدْنَاهَا. Again, we spread out the earth. Because when the earth was created, as I was saying, it was water. It was primarily water. There was land, but there was primarily water. And Allah Ta'ala spread out earth on that water from beneath the Kaaba. And that is how the continents were formed. But then they were united. Those continents were joined, as we have already discussed that ayah, in which we discussed not only the earthly continents were joined, but they were joined with the Sama also. It was all one nebulous which formed one mass. And after the creation of that mass, Allah Ta'ala says He separated them asunder. And when the earth got separated in this way, good bulk of it, even today 70% of the earth is water, only 30% is land. Indeed, then those continents became divided. And that is why even today, if you try to join Africa with the Americas, you will see that it joins beautifully there. It settles beautifully there. And Europe can come right when to the top of Africa, and Australia can take its niche at the bottom of Johannesburg. And you can see that pattern, as it were, and Allah separated it. How accurate is the picture pointed in the Holy Book that we can see even today, 14 centuries later, which science did not know of until recently. But Allah Ta'ala in this particular verse, verses 19 to 21 from the Hijr says, وَالْأَرْضَ مَدَدْنَاهَا وَأَلْقَيْنَا فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ وَأَنبَتْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَوْزُونٍ. That is why I cited that ayah. The earth, we spread it out, you see. And therein we had mountains, rawasiya, and we caused things to grow. وَأَنبَتْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَوْزُونٍ, keeping them in due balance. Mawzoon from the word mizan, keeping them in balance. Everything grows in balance. Now, the moment you say that, it is not chance anymore. It is not haphazard creation anymore. It is specific creation. It is creation by its appropriate weight. The mizan decides how much of fruit must grow on earth, how much of cereals must grow on earth, how much of flowers must be created on earth to produce fruits. How much of onions and potatoes must grow on earth. There should not be an excess of the supply on earth. There should not be lesser supply than required on earth. Just as the sun, as we saw, that distance so that it does not scorch the earth or freeze the earth. Likewise, no production which should be in excess than is necessary. And so the growth from within the ground, وَأَنبَتْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَوْزُونٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا مَعَائِشَ وَمَنْ لَسْتُمْ لَهُ بِرَازِقِينَ. And so that for you there is rizq. From this creation that is created in balance, there is rizq for those who live on earth. Rizq for those for yourselves, for those for whom you are responsible, and for those for whom you may not be responsible to give them rizq, but Allah is responsible to provide rizq for them. So you can see that this creation, which the scientist looks at purely academically, Allah Ta'ala looks at it divinely, with its divine duty to provide rizq and sustenance to those on earth. And then says, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. Allahu Akbar. He says, and there isn't one thing except that we have an abundance of its supplies in our treasures. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. We have a treasure of everything that you have on the earth. The total control, in other words, is of Allah Himself. وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدَرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. And we do not send it down. The treasure is with us, and we do not send down that treasure except in appointed measure. It is in just that appointed measure that it is sent down. Then when the youth asks why there is a scarcity, why are there times when there is famine, why is there a time when there is a drought, we know that it has nothing to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has sent down in appointed measure. He having sent down in appointed measure, we abused that supply, which has resulted in a drought or has resulted in famine. We suppress what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent so that we can hike up the prices. Well, there will be a famine. We suppress water and there will be drought. We abuse forestation and there will be drought. Because Allah Ta'ala in Quran has told us exactly how to deal with all that He has created. And so He says, and says this for sure, that I've sent this down, all this down in due proportion. And he said it 14 centuries ago. The point that the issue is, therefore, it is certainly a creation in balance. It is not creation in a haphazard way. Take you to Surah Taha, in verses 53 and 54, he says, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ مَهْدًا. Fantastic proposition from Allah. He says, I have created the world for you, the earth for you, like a cradle. Mahd, like a cradle. So that is where the little one is placed and then looked after. He is fed, he is clothed, everything that the little one needs is provided for the little one in that cradle. Allah says, that is how I have created the earth for you. And inserted roads for you, so that you can have your paths. وَسَلَكَ لَكُمْ فِيهَا سُبُلًا. And I have inserted in it roads for you. وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. And I have sent down water from you from the sky, because it is necessary that water should come from the sky. Sometimes it is necessary that water should come from below, and for that he has springs, and we shall come to that. 3 ayats of Quran, time permitting inshallah, 3 ayats on water flowing from the springs. This is what I say, all this cannot take place by itself. Water required from the heavens, it comes from the top. Water required from the bottom is supplied from beneath the soil. He says, وَسَارَ لَكُمْ فِيهَا سُبُلًا وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِنْ نَبَاتٍ شَتَّى. And he says, for these, we have created these plants in pairs. فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّن نَبَاتٍ. Of these plants, we have created them in pairs, shatta, separately. Each is separate from the other. The apples grow separately from the pears grow separately from the oranges. Each growing separately, and each having a pair within their own tribe, within their own creed, as it were. That organization, I say, eliminates any possibility of things happening by themselves. This is a definite creation, exactly as Allah says 14 centuries ago. He says, this is how I have created them. Kulu wa ar'aw an'amakum. Eat them, he says. I've given you all these fruits. I've given you these plants. Eat them, he says. That is lawful for you. That is your sustenance. And pasture your animals. Pasture your cattle. وَأَرْعَوْا أَنْعَامَكُمْ. And then the final injunction, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي النُّهَى. Now that is a separate word. A word in our discussion we have come across for the first time. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي النُّهَى. In this there are signs for those with intelligence. There are those يَتَفَكَّرُونَ بِسُوءٍ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And you know, we saw, now we are told these are signs for those who have intelligence. It is unfortunate that they are created men and they have been given intelligence, but they do not use intelligence. So again, you can see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains those things. And then in the next verse that I wish to put to you, chapter 27, verse 61, he dogmatically asks the question, أَمَّنْ جَعَلَ الْأَرْضَ قَرَارًا. Who is it that created the earth as a place of abode for you? وَجَعَلَ خَلَالَهَا أَنْهَارًا. And then set up rivers for you. وَجَعَلَ لَهَا رَوَاسِيَ. And set up mountains for you. Who is it that did all this? Exactly the question that we are discussing, the root of it, that it could not have come out by itself. Somebody must have created it. Question Allah Ta'ala says, who then created it other than Allah? It's a challenge to humanity, as it were. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ حَاجِزًا. And He has created barriers between seas. This was not known. Today science knows that between seas, Red Sea and the water from Gulf of Aqaba, they don't mix at all. The water from the Mediterranean Ocean and the water in the Atlantic do not mix, because between those seas, Allah Ta'ala says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ حَاجِزًا, I've created barriers between Bahrain, between two seas. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ, is there then another God with God? Is there a God other than God? But أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Unfortunately, the majority, most people do not even know whether there is another God besides God. But you can see Allah Ta'ala talking about these things. A concept not thought of. There is no work by Plato on this. There is no work by any philosopher before the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his progeny on that matter, before these verses being revealed in the fashion in which they were revealed. But you can see that this ayah also talks about the crust of the earth and the creation of the crust of the earth. That the crust of the earth was shaking, and Allah Ta'ala therefore put rawasiya, He put mountains, to set up mountains, to stabilize them. More of this tomorrow. But we notice that despite that, there are rifts in that crust. There are flaws in that crust. As a result, we have earthquakes still today. But more of that tomorrow, inshallah. And He says so beautifully in Surah Mulk, ayah 15, هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ وَإِلَيْهِ النُّشُورُ. He says, I have created therefore, هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا, I have made the earth docile for you. Point we discussed even yesterday. We are sitting here, we have no clue that the earth is rotating, it is moving, either on its axis or around the sun. We comfortably traveling from one part of the world to another, living our lives. And indeed, it is in every way docile to us. It grows the plants for us, it provides the roads for us. So Allah Ta'ala says, walk on it. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا. But the fantastic thing is that He says, walk on its broad shoulders, on its broad sides. So Quran 14 centuries ago is already saying that what you have is just the top. What you are seeing is just the top, just the sides. There is far more in it. And when you come to the core, from the crust of the earth, the story is totally different. Then the story is totally different. But we are not discussing the core in this particular ashram. We are discussing the crust, and that is where the plants grow and the roads are built. So He says, walk on it. And وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ, and these sides will produce rizq for you, and you eat from that. وَإِلَيْهِ النُّشُورُ, but know all the time. And this is what the scientist needs to know also. Know all the time that ultimately there is the return to Him. وَإِلَيْهِ النُّشُورُ, that having stayed on this earth, eaten the rizq, and walked on it, on this docile earth created for you, ultimately there is return to Allah. So do not think, in other words, that as you eat, there is no questionability. You can eat what is halal and what is haram. As you earn and you walk around the earth, you can walk as you like, injuring other people or injuring plants, because they have life also. Or that you can walk around this earth, earn your living in whatsoever manner you like, lawfully or unlawfully, because then there is nushur, there is going back to Him and rendering the earth. But that is what the atheist does not want to know. He wants to live as he likes and to conduct himself as he likes. We say to him, we caution you for your own good. You can live in this world as you like, but when the eye closes and ultimately the questioning comes, you will be in for a shock. Let us tell you now, so that you can mend your ways. And when you mend your ways, you can then find the heaven that we covet. Well, that is Quran in so many words. And then there are all those ayats on the water cycle. I do not know whether we can go through those, but let me give you the background to these ayats, these verses on the water cycle. Today we know what the water cycle is. We know that water comes from the rain, and it is the rainwater that falls on the earth. The soil absorbs that water. The water penetrates into it. The soil has the capacity to conserve water, so that even in winter it is not totally dry, so that in times of famine there is still water in the soil. The soil has that capacity to conserve water. Men in the 6th century did not know this at all. They did not know this. Plato thought, and this is in his writings, Plato thought that the water in the soil comes from the oceans. The oceans, the winds blow on the oceans and blow the water. The water splashes out, as it were, from the ocean and is thrust onto the soil, and that is how the soil gets its water. Very shallow thinking, because that only means that the coastline will get water in that way. But we know plants grow even in the interiors of the continent, where there is no water of that type at all. Aristotle thought there were underground lakes, and it is through underground lakes that water is supplied to the soils, which is also incorrect. What is correct, the scientist tells us. The scientist of today, after his research, says no, it is the rain that when water falls from the rain, that water, not all of it remains on earth, and we know this as a fact. We know this, that there is immediate absorption of that water into the soil, and the soil then conserves the water. But again, the soil must not be inundated with water, because then it would spoil the soil. There must be just enough quantity of that soil to keep it alive, to keep it lubricant enough to be able to help in the process of photosynthesis. Well, and in the process of the growth of the plant. Well, this is what Allah Ta'ala says in His ayats, that even when I send out water in the rain, I send it out in due proportion. That which the scientist says is necessary, Allah Ta'ala says He has been doing it from time immemorial, because it is from the time that the earth was created, before man came on earth, that plants grow, that the soil has facilitated growth, and indeed growth in a manner that has ensured production of plants. Yes, indeed, in Surah Qaf, chapter 50, verses 9 to 11, he says, وَنَزَّلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً مُبَارَكًا. I have sent blessed water in the form of rain. It is not water that you can spurn at. It is blessed water, مَاءً مُبَارَكًا فَأَنْبَتْنَا بِهِ جَنَّاتٍ وَحَبُّ الْحَسِيدِ. And through that water, bihi again, through that water you have gardens and grains for harvest. Habb al-Hasid, and grains for harvest, from which we get all our grains, the wheat, the flour, the rice, etc. And whatever quality, basmati, pure Indian rice, or any kind of other rice, all that from this ma'an mubarakan, this blessed water that comes, that it has in that water the quality to so that these plants flourish. وَالنَّخْلِ, and palm trees, he says, بَاسِقَاتٍ لَهَا طَلْعٌ نَضِيدٌ, and palm waters with their piles of fruitstock, one above the other, رِزْقًا لِلْعِبَادِ. He says that all this is sustenance. All this is food for my servants. And indeed, those who do not have food, for example in Arabia, in a place like Arabia, those who do not have food rely on dates. They eat dates all the way through. And we know dates contain all the properties of that a human being needs. It has proteins in it, it has carbs in it, it has vitamins in it, all the qualities that Allah has put in it. And all that comes through because it grows through that ma'in mubarakah, that water that is blessed, that creates such blessings. He says this is rizqan lil-ibad وَأَحْيَيْنَا بِهِ الْبَلَدَ الْمَيِّتَ, and by so doing we revive land which was dead. Land which had become totally dead. which does not grow plants because it is dry, there is no water in it. The plants do not receive water, the soil does not have. He says, I send water, and we will see more ayats of that tomorrow, how he moves clouds to areas where water is required and supplies the rain. And he says he carries out. Point I'm making is that celestial organization we saw in the heavens equally applies to what is going on earth. There is that earthly organization of equal competence, equal efficiency, and equal efficacy. But to complete that ayah, there is just one bit left, and he says, وَأَحْيَيْنَا بِهِ بَلَدَ الْمَيِّتَ, and by that water we revive land which is dead. وَكَذَلِكَ الْخُرُوجِ, and in the same way there will be khuruj, there will be revival of man to present himself before Allah. And how does that come about? If land that is dead can be revived with water, then even man who is dead can be revived on the orders of Allah. He will be revived and he will be questioned. I often wonder, and I often wish that those in Karbala became conscious of that there is khuruj, there is the re-wakening up, and on that day then there will be questioning. There will be questioning by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of their deeds. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam went out of his way repeatedly to warn them and to ask them, that do you think you will not answer for these deeds? You will not be answerable for what you are doing to me, and the agony you are causing me? Because the agony that was caused to Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not merely the physical agony. That was only part of it. Indeed, he kept saying that these arrows that are flung on me certainly cause pain, but they cause me less pain than the pain I feel of seeing my dear and dear ones being slaughtered the way they are being slaughtered. My dear and dear ones parting from me in the manner in which they part from me, and then me to have to allow them to go and fight this cause, and yet how can I stop them when Islam is in jeopardy? And tonight we remember Awn and Muhammad, those beloved daughters of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. That was the greatest pain for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because Awn and Muhammad were the beloved of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, who was the beloved sister of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Indeed, you remember when Bibi Fatima alayhi salam had her last moments. In her last moments, she called Zainab and said, Zainab, when Hussein goes to Karbala, you don't remain behind. Zainab, go with him to Karbala. I will not be there to accompany him. And in my absence, who will go with my son to Karbala? And you know what will happen in Karbala? Zainab promises her mother, I promise I will be with Hussein alayhi salam, and I will look after him, and I will look after his children also at every stage of the journey, exactly as Bibi Fatima Zahra herself promised her mother Bibi Khadija at the last minute when Khadija was going. She embraced her Fatima and said, Fatima, there is only one thing that pains me as I leave the earth. And Bibi Fatima says, mother, what is it? And Bibi Khadija alayhi salam says, Fatima, it pains me to leave your father alone. I always lived with him. I was his partner in his mission. They assaulted him. They abused him. They called him names. I was always there to give him hope, to give him company, and to give him support. Now there will be nobody to do that in my place. Fatima, you take my place. The Holy Prophet called Fatima Ummu Abiha. You are the mother of her father. Indeed, that is how Bibi Fatima Zahra behaved. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam makes a similar promise to Imam Hussein alayhi salam that eve of Ashura, when Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam goes round to supervise the tents to make sure that everything is alright. He stands outside the tent of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, and what does he hear? He hears Bibi Zainab alayhi salam saying to Awn Muhammad, or Awn Muhammad, you are the grandsons of two lions. Your maternal grandfather is Ali ibn Abi Talib, Asadullah al-Ghalib. He himself is a lion of God, and your paternal grandfather is Ja'far al-Tayyib Tayyar, who is flying on wings in heaven, having given martyrdom. You cannot fail tomorrow to give your martyrdom. You will abuse the name of your grandparents if you do not. How much more could Zainab have said to Ahmad Muhammad? And said to them, you must give your lives in the cause of Islam tomorrow. And they turned round, and Abbas cried, hear this. They turned round and said, Mother, do not worry. We have been trained by our Uncle Abbas alayhi salam. We have been trained in valor. We have been trained in courage. You will see the courage we will show tomorrow. And Bibi Zainab alayhi salam becomes pleased, and then turns round and tells them, oh my little ones, if you are going to show courage tomorrow, fight so that you conquer Euphrates. When you conquer Euphrates, we can tell the world it was not a fight for water. It is not because we could not have conquered Euphrates. It was all Islam that we were fighting for. But beware, oh my children, Asghar is thirsty. Asghar has had no water, has had no milk for 3 days. Don't drink a drop of water unless you know Asghar has already had water. Our lives we sacrificed for this loyalty of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. What courage, what nobility she was inspiring into her children, not even to have a drop of water. Ultimately, Ashura Day comes, the children go to Imam Hussain alayhi salam and seek leave, and Imam Hussain alayhi salam say, Ahmad Muhammad, why are you being so cruel to me? How can this uncle, 57-year-old, give leave to children of 12 and 13 to go and die? I cannot do this. Your beloved mother will be alone in the world. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam immediately flies in and says, oh my brother, I have sent them here. The children say, uncle, our mother has sent us. Our mother cautioned us that the day should not end before we give our lives. We have only come for permission to give our lives for Islam. Let us go. And Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, Zainab, how can I allow this to happen to you? You can see how much more painful it was to Imam Hussain alayhi salam that these youngsters who were going to be the progeny of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam be smothered and smashed in this way. But Bibi Zainab alayhi salam gives Imam Hussain alayhi salam an answer that makes Imam Hussain alayhi salam helpless. She turns round to her brother and says, oh brother, if on the day of judgment my mother asked me, Zainab, my son was giving his life in Karbala, he was giving the lives of his sons also, you spared the lives of your children, what will I reply? You will make me ashamed to my mother. Oh my brother, let them go. So made helpless, Imam Hussain alayhi salam lets them go, and indeed when they went, they fought valiantly. They fought, they showed that in their veins flows the blood of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. Indeed they showed that they were trainees of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. They fought until they got to the tent of Umar ibn Sa'd, knocked to the tent and said, Umar, come out and fight with us if you dare. These boys of 12 and 13 fighting, wanting to fight Umar ibn Sa'd himself, and Umar ibn Sa'd fled from his tent. He opened the rear door and fled from the rear door, did not dare fight Umar, these children, but goes round and says to his army, says, you can never fight these people. These two are the children of Amir al-Mu'mineen and of Ja'far al-Tayyar. Go around them, surround them in full bulk. The whole army must be sent upon them, some throwing stones on them, some arrowing them, some spearing them, some applying swords on them. And it is in this way ultimately that Aoud and Muhammad came down from their horses and called the uncle, Assalamu alayka ya Allah. Oh our uncle, our last salutation to you. Imam Hussain alayhi salam gallops to the bodies of these children. Little life is left in them. This uncle of 57 asks the children of 12 and 13, look at the time that has befallen Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He asks them, oh my little children, you will not be alive by the time I take you to the haram. Indeed, you may have lost your life by then. If you have a message Euphrates. We got to the water of Euphrates, but as we entered that Euphrates thirsty, and we came out thirsty, we have not had one drop of water. Tell our mother, we are dying now, totally thirsty. Great message for Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. But can you imagine what arrows there were into the heart of Imam Hussain alayhi salam? Not only are his nephews dying, but they are dying totally thirsty. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة.